like clips every time.
Say it with a British accent.
Hello.
Hello.
Good day.
Welcome
Some to
to
social.
Social.
Oh, that sounds good.
Good day.
Good day, mate. You ready? In this second part of our UCS series, we're going to talk to one of the first graduates of UCS, Luke Goldman. I'm really excited to get that student perspective because one of the things that we were so fearful of as parents was, what does this school look like for our kids? And I know a lot of other people did too. And so we got to talk a little bit about what that looks like now. If we could go back in time and encourage ourselves, here's all these amazing things that we got to experience as parents, as students. And Luke really brings a great perspective to what it was like being a student at UCS. So I hope you really enjoy our conversation. We've got Luke Goldman here, and he is one of the first ever graduates at the University Charter School in Livingston in Sumter County. And Luke, just kind of tell me about your story. You're from Livingston, so tell me a little bit about that, what that story looks like for you.
First off, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to doing it. Just a little bit about myself. I grew up here right outside of Livingston in Gainesville, Alabama, about 10 minutes from here. And so I've been around UW all my life, just been a part of my family. Both my parents went here, so I'm deeply rooted in UWA. One of my earliest memories is actually going to the homecoming parades, watching Louis the Tiger and stuff. So I've really enjoyed that growing up. And as far as like school goes, I went to a really, really small private school near my hometown in Gainesville. Didn't have many students, but the school, they only went to 8th grade. The plan was always probably to, do homeschooling, because that was about the only other choice I had. Because, the Sumter Academy was closing it, we knew that wasn't an option anymore to be able to go do that. Then they started having talks at the charter school. So we were like, what's this charter school going to be like? We were trying to find out. My family, we were trying to find out more information about it. And it actually worked out that they opened up right whenever I was going to be going into 9th grade. It's the transition, how when it started, so that was good.
Well, I feel like that's kind of a lot of people's stories, is how everything just perfectly fell into place. Do you feel like that with some of your classmates or any of the people that you got to know while you were at charter school?
Oh, absolutely. I had a really unique, class that I had. We had different, we came from different backgrounds, but we really got to know each other and pulled together, But I think that's what really drew us to go to UCS, and be a part of that first class, was because it just worked out really well. With the academy closing, some of the students that were in my class that went to the academy, they had to do a bi-year. Instead of having to go way off somewhere to a different school, when the charter school opened, it opened that opportunity to where they could just go in kind of like I did.
So it's really cool. We wanted to talk to you because you are the first graduating class. How many students were in the class?
17.
How many men were in the class? Was it pretty even?
It was even. I think we had a little bit more girls than boys, but it was pretty even.
And what was different about your experience at UCS, coming from a small school that was private, going to a charter school that technically was public, but it was still small too? Like, what were the things that stood out to you as differences?
I remember it being really exciting at first. It was different for me. Like I said, like my school I went to was really small. I mean, UCS it's growing, but it was still small too. But having a smaller class, it allowed me to transition a little bit better. But it's still certain aspects of it were exciting. I really got involved in sports. That was new. I hadn't really ever done that before. And as far as like some of the organizations and stuff, that really I enjoyed starting and being a part of that. So I really it helped me to open up a lot, and be able to branch out and do new things. It allowed me to have a lot of different opportunities.
So you were saying it felt like everything fell into place.
Yeah, perfectly. We all came from, like I said, we all came from different areas, so it all brought us together though, so it worked real well.
So do you feel like that is kind of the story with almost everybody you meet there at that school, even in your own class?
I did feel that way. They saw the UCS opening as an opportunity. They saw, based off what we've accomplished so far, allowed students to be successful, and it prepares them for their future. So I think it helps bring the community together.
One of the things, too, that we had talked about earlier was how some of the people you went to school with had no options between the seventh grade and the ninth grade. And so tell me a little bit about what you know that those students had to do.
I know a lot of students, they had to, some of them like did homeschooling, some of them they had to travel, and I know that really took a toll on having to figure out where to move to. I know some had to go actually all the way to Mississippi or South Alabama. At that time, I don't know if they even realized that they thought this was going to be the next future for them, that they were going to have to travel that distance, through high school. For me, I was still in school. My school went to the 8th grade, so I didn't really experience that.
We were kind of in that same situation too. When my son was finishing kindergarten, there wasn't an option. We looked at going to the public schools here, but I also know myself and I cannot get someone to Demopolis by 7:30 in the morning because it's just way too chaotic at our house in the morning. And so I was really thankful. My husband had the experience of repeating a grade just to kind of get more maturity under his belt. And Reese is late in the year changing ages. And so he did kindergarten twice at the campus school. And I love the fact he started in first grade because I know how many years they've been open. So this is their 7th year because he's in 7th grade. So tell me a little bit about the differences between what you experienced at the small private school and, well, charter school, it was what, 250 students the first year? It was still small, but what were the differences that you experienced, good or bad?
Like I said, being part of a small school, we did a lot of, it was small private school. I think actually I had around 60 kids total. So how I look at it is a lot of the curriculum we did was based off a homeschool curriculum. Throughout each year, I actually had the same teacher for every course. That was a little bit different going to the charter school in how a traditional like public or private school would normally have, where you change classes every day. I didn't experience that at my first school I went to, they taught us each the same course every time. Now we have recesses, so we got to go outside and have a good time, but we'd come back into the same classroom and switch over to math. We had our desks and stuff, and our teacher would be like, all right, get your math books out, and then next, get your English books out. So that was a unique experience. But it was also a unique experience switching over and learning how to do a more traditional setting at UCS. The private school that I went to, it really set me up and prepared me for being at the charter school. I firmly believe that. A lot of schools traditionally, they stick to each grade. Like if you're in 7th grade, you're only going to do 7th grade curriculum. Well, the school that I attended, we did a lot of high school, even high school curriculum in middle school. So that really allowed me to have a jump start, so it worked out perfectly when I went to the charter school.
That's nice too, because sometimes people think about public schools and you're just a number and you are where you're at. And so they don't try to make sure that you can stay on task or on track. And what's really cool, where is it that you went before during 8th grade?
It's called Southern Star School. It's in Geiger, Alabama.
So I'm kind of impressed with Southern Stars, like being ahead grade level wise, just not in the traditional track sense, prepared you in a way that some probably really were not there. Do you feel like that was the case, that sometimes even though they did have a consistent regular experience much like yours or a regular public school, that they were behind, or did they fall right into where they started at UCS?
I honestly would say they were ahead because they prepare students to be able to, even coming out of 8th grade, they prepare them to be able to like enter the workforce. And I really think we were ahead. I know going into charter school, I could tell that I was ahead as far as a lot of my classes, like with English and stuff, and it allowed me to really hit the ground running. And from an athletics aspect too, we played athletics within the school. We didn't play other schools, which is a little bit different as well. But we had 3 recesses per day. We did a lot of like physical activity, a lot of recesses, and enjoyed running around growing up. Baseball and
Traditional school sports.
not traditional school
So
sports.
when
No.
you got to UCS, you didn't really have a background in sports as far as like organized sports.
No, ma'am.
Tell me about, you were an athlete at UCS,
I was
lettered.
triple threat.
Were you captain on any of your teams?
I was captain on the football team and the basketball team.
So tell me about your experience doing sports at UCS. Because a lot of people, the way the sports stuff started, they wanted to just go all in at first, I know, but they decided to kind of layer sports in instead of just doing all of the big 4 at one time. What was your experience as an athlete there, and any of those stories that you want to share?
I'd say it was really exciting because, that's what I was kind of concerned about at first, learning about the charter school. I didn't know how how much depth the teams are going to have already by the time I got there because I knew that they had already been going open a year. I went in, the ninth grade year. So, but I really found out, they were just starting sports out. Well, I had never had a sports background, but I found that a lot of my teammates that I had that starting those first teams out, they didn't have any sports background either. It allowed us to really bond together and really start off, the different sports team. Because like take football, that was one of my favorite sports was football. Was a captain on the football team and really got to grow in who I am as a person through playing football. And I still remember the first day of practice ever in like UCS history. We had going behind. We had a little tiny half football field, practice field. We called it the hay field. So we'd run down the hill and get ready for practice. But just starting it off, the first year I was at UCS, we didn't even play a single game. But they'll tell you we started from scratch. We really did. Like I remember the first day, we didn't even know how to put shoulder pads on. We were putting them on backwards and every which way. But to see how we really grew as that first year of practicing, because Coach Mosley put us through a varsity practice like right off the bat. He needed to lay that foundation to be able to build a good football team, and that's really what we did work up to. I'm sitting in high school, 10th grade. In a traditional, you'd be playing varsity already or JV. I played middle school football in 10th grade, which is a little unusual. They had to like talk to the coaches, but hey, we got one 10th grader, but they were really cool. We grew in leaps and bounds, is how I look at it. We went from having only 1 year of practice to playing a middle school year to having a really, really successful JV year. I think we only had one loss that season of JV. And my senior year was actually our first year of varsity. Looking back, if they hadn't prepared us the way we did, it could have been a lot worse. But it was a really, really good year of growth because, since I've graduated, the past 2 years, they made the playoffs in only their third year of varsity. So that is like phenomenal, I think, for starting a football program because we're playing against schools. They've been open 100-something years, and so we're just starting off, and already been able to compete with them really well.
That's one of the things I've been impressed with because you just never know. And we really, aside from maybe the softball, t-ball, baseball that we've got going on in Livingston, we did some flag football. Upward basketball is at the Baptist church, but we really don't have a robust experience of sports for kids in elementary and middle. And I was really wondering, I was blown away even with other sports that basketball makes it to the state tournament in the first 4 years. And so it's just been really impressive, and that's the cool thing I think about this school, that it has met this need, that we have some really talented athletes in our community, and the parents have made so many sacrifices. I know so many moms that drive to volleyball in Meridian or swim in Tuscaloosa and tennis all over the place, and then we all put them in those tennis clinics in the summer that Jeff Beeman puts on. But there's a lot of effort into getting our kids the opportunities to play sports. And so that is the blessing with the school, is even if they've never played sports, they've got a really solid foundation now because of what your class and the athletes you played with did. So that's really impressive. So your first year, how many games did you win in football?
So my first year, like I said, we actually
Or the second year, the first year you played games?
First year middle school, that's going way back, trying to remember that. But I think we did about evened out. We only that first year we only won one game. So it was a really good building year. But I remember we actually beat Demopolis. We played Demopolis Middle School, went to overtime, and actually beat them 12-6.
Wasn't it the last game of the season too?
The last game of the season, and I'm talking about that was like the highlight of the year. It encouraged us so much, just the excitement that was around it. And it showed that we put in that work, for 2 years of practicing, and we reaped the benefits. Even though it was just one game that we won that middle school season, we
still at least got one the first year. So you said you did football. You said you're triple threat. That's fancy. So you played basketball and baseball as well? Okay. If you could pick, would it be football, the one you'd have to stick with?
I'd say it would be football that I'd stick with, but I also add that each sport that I played challenged me in different ways and really helped me become who I am as an individual.
Were a lot of the coaches from other places that came out. So you have people who aren't even from Sumter County coming in to build up these athletes. Do you think having people with those outside perspectives of other schools that are already established, do you think that helped them when they created a program for you?
Absolutely. Having that background, they'd come from, all across the state, a lot of the different areas, and they'd been a part of successful football programs in the past, so they knew that what needed to take place to be able to get us on the same level.
So we were talking a little bit before we started recording, but you were saying that it had been 10 years since there was a high school, really a strong high school located in the center of town, right across from the Sumter County Courthouse, right? So, what does that mean? How did that change things for the area?
It affected the community in a positive way. Like the university here, the university is the heart of Livingston, and this community really supports UWA. It had been almost a decade since we had a central high school located in Livingston, so I feel like that sense of that, traditional small town high school atmosphere had kind of faded a little bit, and the community really had to help them, work on finding that again. I think too, like with sports, you can really see how the community is starting to like really dive in and be a part of our sports community and the charter school in general. So
Well, and I feel just recently homecoming has been a huge thing. It's grown over time, but people are painting windows and now we're having parades and there's all kinds of stuff that are happening. And you were saying we're a college town, but it hadn't been a high school town in a while, so now it's a high school town. That's awesome. So I actually got to know you during 2020. What year were you in 2020?
I would have been a freshman.
Really? Wow. So in spring of 2020, you signed up for dual enrollment and you took my speech class with UWA. And that was a really weird time because UWA was trying to figure out a lot about what we were going to do. One of the few colleges that remained open on campus in the country. And I would say the same for UCS. They weren't scared to stay open. They were just cautiously optimistic about navigating the challenges. And so tell me a little bit about what that looked like and what you observed through that period of time.
It's challenging. There's a lot of uncertainty and unknown. We didn't really know what all was going on at the time and how things were going to work out. The world was kind of locked down at that time. As a high school, it challenged us to be able to persevere through it and be able to see how can we work around these different things and allow us to be able to stay open and able to have class. I do remember we went online for a semester, and it took both the students being able to work with the teachers and the teachers being able to work with the students, learning. Nobody knew what Zoom was then. I didn't know what Zoom was then, but I think everybody knows what Zoom is now. I think if we weren't willing and able to work together, we wouldn't have been able to reopen as quick as we did.
One of the things that stood out to me was how every student had a device, whether it would be an iPad or a Chromebook. So do you think a lot of those resources, which I think were something that they were given as a resource to utilize, it was at first a lot of donated items. So do you think that made a difference in your ability to stay connected with the school and not feel like you didn't really know your teacher? Because that was your first semester. That's wild.
I think that definitely did. Starting the school off, they said, "Hey, we're gonna have y'all are gonna have access to these laptops or iPads, whatever we had at that time, and they really helped teach us how to navigate using them and learn that. So we were prepared. We didn't know ahead of time that was going to happen, but we were already prepared and had those methods set forth.
So now you're at UWA,
Mm-hmm.
obviously because of your speech teacher.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell me what that is like for a student doing dual enrollment. Like, that was one of my favorite things I got to do was teach UCS students. Honestly, they're some of the best students I've ever had in a speech class because they're still kind of scared of adults. And so then they wanted to do well and stay on task. And they also had parents making them do their homework, so that makes a difference too. But we had a lot of fun, and it was really challenging because only 2 of you, sometimes 3, were in person, and then there were 2 online. And so tell me about why you decided to come to UWA.
The opportunities that it presented me, just being able to do dual enrollment through the university and other colleges, it allowed me to be able to get used to taking college courses ahead of time while I was in high school, and it allowed me to get a lot of my credits done. It was a blessing, is really what it was, being able to already do that. And it helped prepare me for life after high school, to know how to really navigate the college experience.
It's awesome. Well, we're better for it because UCS students want to come here. I get really excited when I see students from UCS in the cafeteria their first semester here, and they've attended an event here or they've taken a class with somebody, and uh, they already feel like family once they get here, and then they also feel like they have some support once they get here. Um, this is like a really unique perspective. A lot of people are scared of change. And so when something new comes along, there's not like just this everybody celebrating. And so if you could go back in time, and I was listening to this song with Reese the other day, The Letter to Me by Brad Paisley, if I could write a letter to my 17-year-old self, right? And so if you could go back in time and write a letter to yourself and maybe plenty of people in the community, from the student perspective, why was it a good thing? What would you tell them so that it would ease their fear over something new entering into the conversation about education?
I'd say you gotta it's gonna be hard at first, maybe. You may face a little bit of challenge, but you know, with adversity, you can face challenges, and when you face it with the community that we have here in Livingston and the charter school community, they're really supportive of one another, and they're gonna help you get through it. And the challenges that you face help prepare you for the future. They help prepare you for life after high school, life after college, entering the workforce, and they help to just help the student to be able to, handle those different things, because life's not going to be easy, but it ultimately helps you be able to be ready for those experiences, I think.
What would you tell parents who were trying to decide and may have not been real excited about having to do a charter school as opposed to maybe a private school or driving to another public school? There were a lot of people who were really fearful about what it would look like. What would you tell them to ease their fears?
That I would say that just try it. Let just be open to doing it. The charter school there, they have way more opportunities, I feel, than your traditional high school setting does. And they have those measures in place to not only provide the resources that your student can use, but also prepare them. And just the administration is great. How the teachers, all the teachers I dealt with, they were really like the professors here at UWA. They're really putting the student first. They're making sure their needs are met, making sure they're up in their classes and that they're understanding what they're being taught, and making sure that the students are going to be successful.
So, one of the things we also talked about was being the first graduating class, you got to start a lot of those traditions that some of us are reaping the benefits of. I just got back yesterday. We came home with 6 winners at the state junior and elementary beta. And today we just found out that Hudson Jones won first place in vocal solo. So lots of people are going to go to nationals this summer. But you were saying that you were able to get beta off the ground and you were part of that process. What does that mean to you, being able to see kids thrive and continue some of the things that you've done?
It's an honor, and it really encourages me and means a lot to me, because I know in that, you know, even though at first it might have been difficult getting it started off, it was challenging starting these different, Beta Club and National Honor Society and all the different organizations that we set off the ground. But knowing that me and my class, we were able to help lay the foundation for that, and that it's going to benefit UCS students, years and years and years down the road, because I know that these are good organizations and they really set you up to be successful and to gain the experiences you need for the outside world. So it was an honor, knowing that they'll be there for years to come to help the students.
Yeah, I love everything that we have, and then it encourages a lot of people to try new things. Like they have DECA now, and they have a variety of different, almost specialized programs that students can take, so that way they're focused on maybe what their major might be when they graduate. We were talking a little bit about the community experience and how the community is essential, But the students themselves did a lot of fun community projects that you got to be involved in, and one of the ones I wanted you to share was the garden that your classes did.
So the garden that we started here at UWA was it was a project through the National Honor Society, and we gathered up and we were looking at how can we as a society, how can we help, organization, how can we help give back to the community, what areas do we need to that can help improve upon. So we were looking at the orchard we have here at UWA. How can we help jumpstart that, and really improve upon that. And we're thinking, well, hey, we could start a community garden. It's something that the community members here in Livingston can take part in and really benefit them. So we looked at, well, let's do raised beds, and we thought that was really good. So we actually got to go out and we purchased our materials locally sourced. So we got to learn about, getting, really supporting the community through that, through local materials. We got to learn how to do carpentry, from locals, got to build the different raised bed boxes, and we actually put them on the campus of UWA here where college students can use it, community members are welcome to come out and do it, and got to learn how to do the different, farming aspect of it, or gardening, got to plant different crops in it. I know we had like lettuce and bell peppers and all kinds of different plants, and it was just neat seeing how going through the different processes of doing that project, from start to finish, and seeing how it was successful in the end, because we had a really good crop whenever we got it done, and seeing how it could really improve upon and help benefit the community, because it really, that's a projects like that really can bring the community together, to support one another, because they're benefiting from it, they're reaping the benefits from it.
So do the students do all the planting, or is that it's there for people to utilize the beds how they'd like at this point?
At this point, I know the students still do a lot of the planning with it and help to do that as well, but we wanted it to really be open to the public as well, to be able to allow them, if they need fresh vegetables, hey, you can come out and do get you some fresh vegetables and take part of it. And like I said, we put it on the campus, so we had the college students in mind here at UWA that, well, hey, they may, that's a resource that they can take part in and utilize too, and learn a little bit about it. We're rural around here, rural Sumter, so we do, farming and gardening is part of our way of life.
Well, and now you look at prices of produce and eggs and all kinds of things, and everybody's like, I'm so glad I know someone with chickens. And it is really cool because a lot of times I think people walk by and think it's for other people, but that's a really cool opportunity for us to share with not just our students who are participating in our project, but also with the community, that this is a really cool resource that we can all use. And honestly, if you don't use it, I would be happy to take the raised beds to my house because I don't want to have to build them myself. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share with us about the charter school that we didn't get to cover, or one of your favorite memories from your time there?
I'd just say, as far as memory goes, just I wouldn't change anything about it. I'm a firm believer that the Lord, He directs our paths and our plans, and UCS was always designed to be part of my life, and I wouldn't change a bit about it. I enjoyed it. The Lord really blessed me through it, and I would just say, UCS is going to, if you put your trust in UCS and trust them to take care of your kids, they're going to do it. They're going to help give your students the resources to be able to be successful into the future, and help them to be able to be successful in not only the workforce, but as raising families, and just, being successful out in the world. And they really have a huge arsenal of opportunities that you can take part of, and they're doing some good stuff over at UCS.
Okay, so we want to close with a question for most of our guests that's really similar. I don't think we could ask Dr. Wedgeworth, if you could bring one thing to Livingston, what would it be? Right? That's one of the ones we talked about. But we were talking earlier about traditions. So what's a tradition you think that is really unique to your family, and that you feel like is very Livingston? I didn't give it to you ahead of time.
I'd just say, like,
What's a favorite community tradition that you get to take part of? that you look forward to every year? How about that?
I would say homecoming parade. I know I kind of touched on that earlier, but like that is one of my earliest memories of Livingston and UWA in general. Like always have loved the homecoming parade, getting to see. I liked fire trucks growing up. I was a fire truck kid. You know, I liked all the lights and stuff. So I really remember enjoying that. And every kid likes candy too. You know, so
Oh, it's like you need to wear protective gear if you're in the midst of children at that parade because they will cut you. Absolutely.
that's probably one of my favorite traditions, being a part of that and getting to see all the different floats. And I like it now as I'm older and actually a UWA student here. I can view it from a little bit different angle, and I love seeing the community really come out and support that. Like, you know, if anyone asks me like what's the big event of the year, or you know, when can I really experience Livingston, I would say the whole homecoming week and the homecoming parade, because it really shows how the Livingston community and Sumter County community supports the university that we have here, and they come out, they do their own floats, and it's just a really neat experience, really neat Livingston and Sumter County tradition.
This has been paid for by UWA alumni. Not really, but I agree. When Brett and I first started when he started working here, the year before, we're kind of like your practice only, right? He had no players, and so we were able to come to homecoming, and he was able to reconnect with so many different people in the community that I think it was the reason they remembered to call him when the job came open. And so I think that's one thing we always want to remind students, whether it's a UCS alumni event or a UWA alumni event, going back to those roots in your life is really important. And just hearing you talk about, I mean, I feel like you radiate love about this place, whether it's UWA or UCS, and hearing the stories from the people who have been in these places really makes it appealing for those who haven't had the chance or the time or made the effort to come back. It helps encourage them, and so I think that's our job, is we need to say, come back, let's hang out, it'd be fun. So, well, I really appreciate you spending the time with us, and your story matters, and we are so excited to share that. And so please let us know if you have any other stories that you think we need to check out, because you obviously are very connected.
I definitely will. I enjoyed being part of it. So
thank you, Luke. I appreciate it. So that's our episode with Luke Goldman. I hope you enjoyed hearing that student perspective. I just can't get enough of student stories because they really are going to shape our world, and maybe that's why I teach college courses, because getting to see and hear how they've grown and changed over time is exciting. And what's great is we're getting to watch that happen in real time here with UCS. And so I hope you've enjoyed our series on the UCS story and how University Charter School reshaped the landscape of Sumter County for good. See you next time. Stay social.